Hello, everyone, again. In our stage two, next we have Manuel Sandler, who is a global recognized expert in applied automotive cybersecurity. As an independent consultant, he advises vehicle manufacturers and technology providers on a strategic cybersecurity design and implementation. Manuel is also knowledge management advisor for CYEQT knowledge base, where he advises the automotive cybersecurity professionals, professional competence framework and related training. With a background in mathematics and career spanning roles from development engineer to global process manager, Manuel has a deep understanding of balancing compliance with the complexity of automotive development. He has contributed to the field through his work at ITK Engineering AG, Autolive, and the Cyrus Consulting, and is the author of seminal essential guide to ISO SAE 21434. In this session, Manuel will delve into why systematically empowering cybersecurity managers is more effective than merely focusing on certifications. He will discuss real world approaches that integrate cybersecurity with leadership, people management, education, and processes, aiming to enhance overall cybersecurity effectiveness. Please join me in welcoming Manuel Sandler. Uh, Manuel, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks again to ISFG for the invitation. So my title today, From Regulation to Practice, Frameworks for Cybersecurity Manager to Enable Better Cybersecurity. So as already the last years, I would like to use this chance today to share some insights from different automotive projects around the world and giving some advices that might help you in your daily work. So as stated, my name is Manuel Sandler. Some of you might know me as former partner of Cyrus Consulting. So now I'm working as an independent freelancer and doing this speech together with my colleagues from the Cybersecurity knowledge base. So some of you might ask, why do we have such a high level topic, the Cybersecurity Manager, on a pretty technical conference like this? The answer is quite simple, because still projects fail out there. They run out of money, they do not meet timelines. Individual persons are overwhelmed or even quitting their jobs. And there are many challenges, probably also some of you out there are facing, starting from missing guidance of what they have to do, unclear roles and responsibilities, missing capacities, missing time, missing benchmarks. So how much to do is enough? Sometimes there's a lack of project management behind, and still these unclear or partly unclear situations with regulation standards, how to interpret them, how to apply them, and many, many more. So there are a lot of challenges. And in my last 5 years as a consultant, whenever I was asked to help, it was almost too late. But many mistakes, many situations can be avoided by Cybersecurity Manager in his role, also by the organizations behind. And as I said, today I want to use the opportunity to give some advices on that. Let's start first with the role itself. So who is a Cybersecurity Manager? It's one title, many roles, different responsibilities. So first, when talking about cybersecurity roles, we should always distinguish in two different levels. On the one hand, we have the people working on an organization level, independent from the development projects. And on the other hand, you have the project level, also clearly distinguished in the ISO standard, and project in the sense here of a typical development project out there in the automotive world. And then we have a lot of different names and different roles out there. But from my point of view, it can be usually simplified on an organization level to cybersecurity lead, head of cybersecurity, cybersecurity officer. So the person who is overall responsible. And then on project side, we usually have somebody like a cybersecurity manager. So connecting all the dots and ensuring that the product in the end is secure, all documentation is done, and the compliance is fulfilled. And we have the engineer for the technical topics, for the horror, for identifying, analyzing, and implementing the technical concepts. So sometimes there are some fancy names like a cybersecurity solution architect, but more or less, from my point of view, it can be summarized in these 3 roles. But even if we have these 3 roles, the situation out there is very different from depending on the company. In big companies, it's usually quite simple. You have somebody responsible for the overall topic, and you have your different projects with a more manager guy, a cybersecurity manager, and a technical guy. But if you look out there to all these small projects who have not thousands of employees, the situation is usually quite different. Sometimes, especially if a company has only one product and one development project, usually the cybersecurity manager is also the overall responsible person. Or usually also due to gap of capacity or gap of experts, cybersecurity manager also has to act as a cybersecurity engineer. Or also seen the last years, sometimes it's everything combined. So in big companies, it's usually quite clear, but in small companies, it's more complex. And if we talk about the role of a cybersecurity manager, we need to be clear who we mean. And today I want to focus on this guy in the project, not the technical one, but the other person who has to connect all the dots and balancing all the balls within a project to make it successful. So we have the role, but how to enable this person? So still we have a gap of knowledge and a gap of experience in the industry of automotive cybersecurity. And unfortunately, one common answer is send the people to a 3-day training, get a certificate, and we are good to go. And to whom should we go? So there are a lot of different vendors out there which provide a cybersecurity training and, of course, a certificate behind. But here it's getting a bit more complex, and we need to be aware that in automotive cybersecurity, compared to other areas like automotive spies, OCSP, COSE, PMP, there's no independent organization behind which defines the competences and the needed skills to pass an exam. So there are no common criteria behind, meaning you can go to one of these suppliers here, making your training and certificate, and can go to another one who asks completely different question, has a different expectation of knowledge, and just doing it a different way. And this is some kind of a dilemma, because making or providing certificates is also a business. And if I have to pay to that, I want to pass. And maybe I choose the easiest one and not the one where I learn most. And nobody is checking the quality behind that. So not getting me wrong, I do not criticize the training vendors, not at all. And trainings are very good to share experience and knowledge. But sending a person to a 3-day training is not a proof of an individual competence. And they do not guarantee that a project can be successfully be handled. And still out there, just giving one short example, for a personal example, I had an interview for a job 3 years ago for a functional safety position, had 7 years of experience, and they said in the end, we would hire you, but you have to do an introduction training at TÜV. I said, okay, but that's not the intention behind. But I don't want to blame, I want to provide some solutions and some ideas. So when we talk about competence, on the one hand, we need to consider the technical competence about cybersecurity, about the standards, about the regulations. And on the one hand, of course, we have trainings, and they're good to transfer the basics. We just need to be aware there's not a one-fit-all approach. You need to consider role-specific aspects and also company-specific aspects. Further, there are a lot of references out there. Cybersecurity is not that new anymore. There are a lot of good books out there, blog articles, videos, and many more, which give a good help for specific topics. And of course, and from my point of view, most important, learning on the job with a dedicated mentoring and coaching to gain practical experience. You cannot rate practical experience, real problems in a book. You have to live it, and you need to make the experience and have someone behind who gives you the right direction. But the technical competence, it's only one side of the coin. And there are more skills needed. I call them here the non-technical skills. Even they look a little bit obvious at the beginning, they are at least as important as the left side here of the slides. So as a cybersecurity manager, you need to have skills in problem solving. No project is according to the books. And usually you need to find solutions out of the box. The standard doesn't give you any help here if you have a complete specific situation. You need some leadership skills. You need to be able to moderate, get the most important information out of people in decision making. So usually if you don't have a decision, you don't have progress. And you need empathy. So you need the support from other people to be able to create and to finish your work products. But the others also have their own challenges. So you need to find the right way to handle people, to support, to work with them together and get their support. Same for proactivity. Nobody will tell you what you have to do. You need to go forward. You need to ask. You cannot know everything. You need to go to the people and to ask your questions to survive. The technical experts of a product are others, but you need to get out the most important information. And same about project management and business thinking. You need to get the balance between effort and results. But just going too much in the deep doesn't help if you don't move forward. So in the end, it's a combination of knowledge and of skills to be able to enable the people, or to be enabled as a cybersecurity manager. And again, here I would like to tell you a short personal story. So as you know, as you might heard, I worked for Cyrus Consulting many years, and especially in the early days, we were able to manage successfully projects around the world around cybersecurity with a pretty young team, an average age below 30. And we were not able to manage them successfully due to a decade of experience or more. We are able because we understood to apply the right side here of the slide in the same way as the left side. And that was one of the key factors of the success over the last years. And I'm still quite proud of the people, about the people I had the chance to work with here. So what organizations can now do in order to handle how this competence topic and the role topic? Please stop hunting for certificates. That doesn't add any value if a person is really an expert or not. And focus more on mentorship and coaching to gain practical experience, and in the same way, make a clear understanding communication of the roles. So what is expected from a dedicated person? But it's not only up to the organizations, also the roles itself. Stop collecting certificates and collect experience. Try to learn new things, see different things. That's the best teacher you can have. Further, we wrote it here, read, understand, and apply. Always try to understand why you're doing things and focus on the basics, especially in terms of knowledge, and do not get crazy about the details. You as a cybersecurity manager, you need to be able to talk with the different experts, but you don't need to be an expert in every field. Another big challenge out there is that in the automotive industry, also in others, but especially in the automotive industry, over the last 5 to 10 years, we have highly diverse teams. So you cannot treat everyone in the same way within a project. On the one hand, we have a lot of different cultures. We see it in the conference with participants from all over the world, which is great because I believe that everybody can learn a lot from other cultures. But we need to be aware that some cultures have different behaviors. And some of them you do not disagree to your supervisor, or you do not reject customer wishes. Others like to go more in detail. To quote one of former US colleague who was always making jokes about the German microengineering. But it's also not only the culture, it's also the way of working and the background of people. Sometimes people work in another company in a different atmosphere or coming just from another area. So just as an example, you do not need to explain guys in the production how doors and code beamer is working. They just speak another language. And you need to be aware of that in order to work together. Also, we have different seniority level, but also different generations out there. So time is going faster and faster, and as it is a topic in the whole society, it's also a topic in our environmental work, which we need to be aware of and need to take the usage from. And in the end, the maturity of cybersecurity. We have big players out there who started 5, 6, 7 years ago, have a very good working cybersecurity management system and have the right people and enough expertise and capacity to handle cybersecurity in a proper way. But still, and that especially all the people from the big players need to be aware of, for a lot of companies, it's still a new field. They're still starting with that area, still gaining first experience. So in this area, everyone is different and everyone has a different background where he's coming from. On the other side, cybersecurity is also interdisciplinary. You cannot consider cybersecurity isolated. So you have interface to the whole systems engineering and product development, of course, to functional safety, to IT security, if you want to align some security measures in the production, for example. So cybersecurity cannot work alone. And we have all the different backgrounds in the team. And then we have the ISO standard with its 42 work products. And there's one person in the end, more or less responsible that these work products are created in the end. And that's the cybersecurity manager. So he is responsible for the achievement, but usually he's not the creator of all that work products, which brings him in a quite complicated situation. And the challenge he has is to get all the different areas. So who is this team behind who needs to work together? On the one hand, we have our typical project with a planning phase, we have the development, there's a software team, a firmware team, maybe a hardware team, the production team, the after sales, including decommissioning, maintenance. With a project management, we need to align timing deliveries, need to handle our supplier, maybe together with the purchase team. Quality is pushing us for our deliveries to the milestones. Software update management or the team of software update management alignments need to be done because the updates need to be secure as well. And the customer might have some requests. We need to align with IT. What are synergies with the IT security? Do we have any needs for the infrastructure? And HR needs some support for job interviews, and sales need to know what you can sell to the customer. And then this is this poor guy, his main job is orchestrating all the different areas, balancing all the different areas, supporting them with them, working with them together to get the right results out there. Because in the end, cybersecurity requirements cannot be implemented without a security team. Project management is needed to get more time and capacity. Production is needed to secure the production line as well. After sale has now probably new requirements to decommissioning. So all of them need to work then together. And all of these different groups are affecting the work of the cybersecurity manager. And so we have different stakeholders, and there's an easy tool out there, which probably each project manager knows, but from my point of view, highly underestimated in the automotive industry. And that's the simple stakeholder analysis. And that's something I would also recommend in every cybersecurity project to do that right at the beginning. For those who do not know that, it's usually 4 steps to identify your stakeholder. So who is impacting my project, internally, external, directly, indirectly, a person, a group, organization. This could be the senior management who wants to have the progress. It can be a project manager who needs to have deliveries in time. It can be the software team who needs requirements. It can be the customer. But it can also be, especially from a car manufacturer perspective, the technical service, for example. So who is impacting my project or impacted by my project? Next, we need to analyze what's the expectations, what's the power, how can they impact us? And then we can categorize them based on their relevance. Which are the ones which need to be closely managed, like a customer, for example? Which are the ones which just need to be informed, maybe a quality department, maybe a senior management, or maybe there are some others which with a high influence but less interest, like after sales, for example. And based on that, you have different groups, you have different interests, you know the impact, and you can derive your communication strategy. How to talk, how to communicate with the people. What's the challenge? Do I need meetings? Do I need some kind of a newsletter? Do I need maybe some stand-ups, daily updates, completely depending on the groups? What's the frequency? What are the relevant topics? You do not need to tell management anything about technical challenges on a software level. So also that differs from the group, from the importance. And what I've seen in many projects, if this small exercise is not done at the beginning, it might happen that a system or component owner makes design decisions without taking security into account. He was just not aware. And afterwards, you need to search for arguments for any complicated workaround. Or in terms of costs, that just costs for cybersecurity were not sufficiently taken into account at the beginning. Or also from my own experience or from working with decision makers, especially in terms of a CSMS, sometimes cybersecurity needs also to be sold to some sponsors or the people who provide them the money within a big company. And when doing that, when defining the communication strategy, be aware that everyone needs the right amount of information. Also that we have seen over the years. So not enough information, people might not realize the impact of security. So we have a cybersecurity conference, but for 90% in the automotive world, this is still a small side topic. Or you provide them too much information, they get overwhelmed and they even block any kind of cooperation. I've also seen that in the past. Or too frequent that people get annoyed. Again, the security guys want something. Or just too late information and people get nervous. Are we able to reach the target in time? Oh, we have an assessment next week. We need to have this and that. That's too late. So here also, again, communication is king, and it's important to know who is your stakeholder and who is impacting you. So far, talking about people, let's talk about products and projects. Sometimes I get the statement that cybersecurity management is just working like a checklist across the 21434 products, but not at all. If you consider different kind of projects, we have different system levels. Probably we have here in the call some people from OEMs who work on vehicle level. We have people working on a sub-vehicle feature level. All this apply on component level or even on hardware and software level. So the product depends on your system level. And also from the functionality, if you're on a component level, the products can be completely different. Just comparing an airbag with a battery management system with an HMI. Complete different products, which again need different solutions. And of course, they have also different impact. Again, staying with the example, an airbag has a high safety impact, whereas an HMI might have a higher privacy impact. And all the products have also different use cases. Again, taking the viewpoint of a tier one. One component might be used for different OEMs in multiple vehicle types all over around the world. There's a different sales market with different regional use cases and also different regulations for the same product, for the same ECU at the beginning. So each product is different, and each product therefore requires different approaches for the project and for the company. By the way, that's also from my point of view one reason why a CSMS, a cybersecurity management system off the shelf without taking the company into account doesn't make sense. But that's another story. For a cybersecurity manager, it's important to understand there are a lot of different impact factors out there. Even if you take a carryover project of an existing product, you still have different impacts. Like maybe there's a new hardware, you have architecture limitations. Maybe your customer changes. Maybe your management changes and has different expectations. Or it's a new project, we can do that faster and shorter, so your project condition changes. Or the risk and threat landscape out there is also evolving. What is secure today might not be secure tomorrow. So there are multiple factors out there impacting a cybersecurity manager. And that's also one of the reasons why, at least in my almost 11 years of professional experience, no project worked as planned. There are always unexpected things happening. based on all the impact factors, based on all the project-specific aspects. So cybersecurity management, or the work of a cybersecurity manager, is not working just across a checklist. And the projects never go according to a book. And each project requires new or different solutions. And the final question is now how to handle it, and what is my risk? And there's an interesting book out there from a guy called Simon Sinek. It's called Start With Why. We can discuss about the book, but the approach is as ingenious as it is simple. We need to understand why we are doing things. So meaning, why is this work product needed in our context? Why does the ISO standard have this specific requirement? Why is the selected control most suitable? Why does my colleague have this question? Why is my delivery needed in time? Who is depending on that? So we need to be always careful. Even if we work towards compliance, we need to avoid doing things just for the sake of paperwork. So requirements are useless if they're not aligned with the team. If you have a cybersecurity plan and nobody's looking at that, you don't need the effort. And making a Tara which no one understands does not have any value, and especially for processes. Creating processes is a lot of work, but they need to be suitable. Otherwise, it's just paperwork. So always understand why we are doing things. For my last topic, so about supplier management and the whole supply chain. As you know, we have different layers of supplier, and we have this requirement from the UNR that vehicle manufacturer shall identify and manage, for the vehicle type being approved, supplier-related risks. Meaning, in the end, customers need to monitor their supplier, and supplier need to contribute to customer cybersecurity. But always be aware, especially as a cybersecurity manager involved in that, there are different kinds of suppliers. On the one hand, we have the well-established automotive supplier, Bosch, Condi, and many, many more, who are working according to the standard and know exactly what they're doing. We have established suppliers who come from other industries. They are used to work according to standards, but maybe from other regulations. But also for them, it's not that hard to adapt. But we have all the smart small startups out there, or even bigger companies with some kind of a startup environment who just entering the market, who have a well-working product, but less or almost no automotive experience with all the regulations and all the standards behind. And for them, they usually don't have this kind of detailed processes. They do not know what exactly is expected. They also have unclear financial perspective, especially if it's a small one. And for them, it's even harder to make a 2-year investment on processes. And when talking with them, you need to be aware of this complicated situation. And what also makes the whole customer and supplier cooperation more and more complicated is the requirement management. From my point of view, the effort of creating requirements is still often underestimated. And if we look at the situation today, we have a customer who's usually has a concept phase and a development phase. Same for the supplier, usually a little bit delayed because he's depending on the input from the customer. And we have an RFQ phase and some kind of a distributed development phase. And as you see, all these phases are not in sync. So the RFQ stops before the concept phases are usually finished. And it makes it, again, more complicated because on customer side, requirements cannot be finalized during this phase, and draft requirements need to be shared to the supplier to start the cooperation. And they might be created from different departments, and due to time pressure, they are just forward without having proper usability checks. And on the other side, the supplier need to manage hundreds of requirements within a few weeks. Sometimes they even get it in non-editable PDF files, need time to transfer. And in the end, the high time pressure causes an acceptance without proper analysis. So as you see, only in this relationship between a customer and supplier, again, a lot of new challenges pop up. And again, here, one of the solutions is being very, very proactive. And also the cybersecurity manager comes here in place. Ensure that cybersecurity is a criteria for supplier selection. That already in the evaluation of supplier, cybersecurity is considered. Ensure that the cybersecurity interface is early aligned in the project to avoid any underestimated efforts. Do not only consider the CIA topics and the requirements. Ensure that all the other topics around expectations, priorities, timelines, milestones, document exchange, and things like that are clearly aligned to avoid any misunderstanding, and talk to each other on a regular basis about the feasibility of concepts, about missing information, expected delays, etc. Also here, I had a situation in my early years that a customer and a supplier did not talk for 1 year in a distributed development. What was the result? The supplier was not able to deliver, and the customer had to shift his start of production. Just with regular talks, this could have been avoided. As a conclusion for today, I would like to quote a colleague who just made the statements a few weeks ago. So a lot of projects are failing out there, but no project fails due to a gap of technical knowledge. There are usually other reasons why the projects are not successful. And as my presentation was not technical, my recommendations are not technical either, but maybe even more valuable, and everybody can apply them right away. First, prioritize overview over details. Do not get stuck. Try to keep the big picture, because that's what you're responsible for as a cybersecurity manager. Always plan on 2 tracks. You have your major milestone, your work product, which need to be delivered, but you have all the small tasks popping up all the time in the daily business, and don't mix them up. Otherwise, you will just get lost in a huge amount of tickets. Trust your instincts. In more than 10 years, if you have the feeling something is going in the wrong direction, something might not be correct, usually you're right. So trust your feeling on that. We have all the different communication channels. Might be Teams, chat, Slack, a lot of meetings, and all the other formats up to videos. Still, talking is the best communication channel. I've never seen anything better. Talk to the people. I mentioned before, no decision is a worst decision. So if you do not decide on concept A or B, on solution A or B, you will always stuck. And last but not least, for all the people who are not the experts, who just start this job, just have the first responsibilities here, believe me, don't give up. It's very hard for everyone. We see it here, we have more than 1,000 participants in this conference. So it's not easy for anyone. And sometimes we just need to keep going. So that's it for my side. Thanks a lot for your attention and happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Manuel. It was really insightful. Lot of uh, insights we got it here. Shows us what is very vital for the cybersecurity and where we need to exactly focus on, and what is the route. With that, we have a lot of questions from the audience. I will start taking one by one. And before we reach to the end, and if, in case if I miss anything, Manuel agreed to be available in the launch area for some time, where you can, if any questions are not being answered here, please feel free to reach out, connect with him, personally talk to him, get your own queries and questions answered. Let me start taking the questions from Q&A section. How to handle if we design a product in global level according ISO 2144 and certain market has their own standards, such as China's new cybersec standard. Do you think it's going to increase the cost since we have other standards to consider and comply?
Okay. So my personal opinion is if we are going for 21434, we mostly capture all the other standards and regulations. So UNR, of course, it's on a higher level. Probably most of us know that. We have the regulation in India, which is very close to the 21434 and the UNR regulation. The Chinese regulation, at least what I've seen, as draft versions is also very similar. They have dedicated requirements on testing, as far as I know, so that needs some specific attention. But I would say if you're going for the 21434 as a main input and taking from the Chinese regulations the different test cases into account, and maybe the threats from the UNR annex, I would say from what I've known, what I've seen so far, you're already on a very good way. So yes, there might be some increased costs, but I would say if you're following a proper development, let's say a development standard, which is automotive grade, and you're following the 21434, the costs might not be. I don't expect that high costs, to be honest. Usually people are taking more the shortcut for the 21434 and then they're wondering, especially if some big OEMs are requesting more. But yeah, taking into account the ISO and proper automotive development standards, like if you're also working according to Automotive SPICE, which is a good standard for me as basic. Not talking about the cybersecurity extension, but also talking already about combining 21434 with common Automotive SPICE. You should have a good way to go, and you're also better prepared than many companies out there.
Thank you, Manuel. I'll take it. Another questions. A lot of upvotes are happening. Questions are changing suddenly. Okay. I'll take. How do I map R155 specification requirements to ISO 21434 work products? Can you explain this strategy?
Yes. So again, first, what I mentioned in my presentation, always try to think about what is the purpose behind it. What is try to be achieved by the UN requirement, UNR requirement, and by the ISO requirement. Even they sound different at different abstraction level, in the end, the overall target is usually similar, I'd say. Second, not sure if you're aware of that, but there's at least a draft version of an interpretation document from the UNR 155, public available in the internet, which also provides an initial mapping to this version of the ISO, to be precise here. So the first publishment and some requirements changed, or some requirement IDs changed, but still it gives you a very good indicator what topics could be there from the UNR could be mapped as requirements from the 21434.
Okay, thank you. Next question which we have is how to approach the lack of unique standardization in cybersecurity risk management, example risk levels, to reach a common language with suppliers and the customers.
Yeah, that's actually a quite complicated topic. So of course, on the one hand, you have the CAL in the annex of the ISO. Also now, as far as I know, there's additional work on a ISO PAS standard. But also CAL has advantages, disadvantages, and what makes it even more complicated that some companies have different area or different risk dimensions or severity dimensions. So for example, some already took regulation impact into account, which based also on the VW diesel scandal years ago has some pressure, but this is not relevant for suppliers. In the end, it's something which I would see as part of this, what I mentioned in my presentation, non-CIA topic kickoff that needs to be discussed in the beginning. To take both risk metrics and to discuss how they can be mapped. That's for me the only valid approach, talking to each other really in the beginning, because in the end, the impact is different, and it's also fine that different companies have a different risk level. We talk about the amount of products that might be sold, attack feasibilities, etc., etc. But in the end, yeah, I would bring it as you start a cooperation on the agenda point of the kickoff. That's our proposal. What is yours? Do we find a way to come to it together?
Thank you. We have a next question. Guys, please keep coming the questions. We have a time. How do we determine the scope of CSMS for tier 2 or out of the shelf components?
So first, we need to be clear about the naming. So the CSMS, the Cybersecurity Management System itself, is a term from the UNR 155, which is addressed to car manufacturers. But nevertheless, having similar approach on tier 1 and tier 2 level, of course, would also make sense. And I would there go in the end with the ISO standard. So almost all parts of the ISO, let's start one step before. What is the CSMS? It's in the end, from my interpretation, a framework for organizations depending or consisting of roles, responsibilities, and processes. So process and organization level, how things are handled, and processes which can be applied by the projects. On the organizational level, I don't see so many difference between a tier 1 and an OEM. You need to have competence management, risk management, you have to have the right responsibilities and roles, and some more. On a development side, on a project level, of course, it differs. But here, again, you can take the ISO standard as a starting point, and I would combine that with your normal development standard. So apart from cybersecurity, what are the phases in your project? And what is the impact of cybersecurity on that? For tier 1, probably I would not expect you even to do a Tara, depending on the product, but maybe you do not need one. But then the end, your start of your development is a list of assumptions. Based on that, you have your requirements, you implement them, you verify them, you have alignments with customer, etc. So actually on the tasks you have to do, you need to bring that in a proper process framework with clear responsibilities. And you need to have an idea how the organization works. But on an organizational level, you can take the 21434 as a starting point. And similar out of shelf. In the end, what are the steps in your development? That's the thing which is different between the different levels. But the whole framework is that on organization level and also from supporting processes, there should not be much differences.
Thank you. We have another question. Any specific guidelines for effective gap management between ISO 21434 vehicle level focus and SPICE cybersecurity component level focus?
Specific to effective gap management. So meaning, I'm not sure if I understand it correct, if it's about identifying gaps to these standards or gaps between these standards, vehicle level and component level. So first here, to clarify, the 21434 is not a vehicle standard. It's applicable to all systems in the context of electric vehicles. An OEM needs to apply it, and also tier 1 and tier 2 needs to apply it. And that's also the reason why chapter 10 is so generic and just says you need to have requirements, architecture, verification, etc. on different levels of abstractions. So the ISO is applicable to everyone. And same, it's automotive spy security. It's also something which is applicable or can be applied on all different levels. The only difference usually is what is your input from requirements? Is it all these customer requirements? Is it only from the TARA? Is it also some stakeholder requirements? And do you have any supplier, or maybe not even more, could also be the case. But yes, there are differences between both standards. The ACE by cybersecurity, from my point of view, has some good aspects in supplier management, but which are more detailed than in the 21434. The 21434 has more details in other areas, especially in organization management. But I would say in the end, you can definitely combine them. If it's in your project scope, you can map a lot of them. And whenever one standard has more details, you can follow that and take that into account. But important here is both are applicable on all levels of abstraction. Only the UNR is directly targeting car manufacturers.
Thank you, Manuel. Unfortunately, time is running out, and we might not be able to take all the remaining questions now. I would request you guys to reach out to Manuel Sandler in launch area, and please interact with him, get all your queries answered. And Manuel Sandler, thank you so much for all the insights. We really appreciate your time and effort here, and audience really enjoyed it. And we can see from the emojis itself and the questions, the way they have asked it. Thank you so much, all, and thank you, Manuel. It was a great pleasure having you here. Thank you.
Thank you for the moderation and thank you for the opportunity.